Welcome. Welcome to all of you here in the church and to everyone joining us online today. An apology to everyone in the church because the heating, as you've no doubt noticed, isn't working. That's churches for you. So yes, do keep your coats on, as I see most of you have. I'm hoping you're warmer, those of you at home. You probably are, so you'll be glad to be there. A special welcome to everyone joining us today from Brighton. It's lovely to have you with us. And a belated Happy New Year to you all. And to anyone joining us today for the first time, you are particularly welcome here. I'm going to open with some words that are shared by Bridport Unitarians. And this is what they say. Here is quietness for the healing of our spirits. Here is contemplation for the nurturing of our minds. Here is fellowship for the warming of our souls and of the world around us. Here we may take positive steps together which manifest love, compassion, and generosity in everything. And now, as is our custom, we'll light our chalice flame as a symbol of our free religious faith and our beloved community. And if you're at home and you'd like to light a candle with me, then please do so. Some words from Jennifer Gracen. We come together every week, bound not by a creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods, yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world and who we are together matters. We light this chalice together in that knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. And the theme of today's service is finding shared purpose. But we're going to sing now, and we're going to sing hymn number 158 in the purple hymn books, if you have one. Otherwise, you'll see the words come up for you. It's The Flame of Truth is Kindled, number 158.
Amongst us whose the Spirit
And let us join together in a time of prayer. O God of many names, the personal and mysterious, we come now to a quiet time, an interior place, a place for deepening of the spirit and enrichment of the soul. We seek to know ourselves by knowing you. Let us have the courage to sit in unknowing, the openness to find answers in unexpected places, the willingness to be authentic with ourselves, ready to bring our face to the world. May we be willing to know others by what's genuine in them, by welcoming them into the world, by appreciating the beauty that comes from seeing wholeness and truth. Let us sit for a moment in that quiet depth. Blessed be. And you might like to bring to mind anyone known or unknown to you who is suffering at this time, wherever they may be. Invite you to hold them in your hearts and in the light. As we pray for comfort, for courage, and for guidance for all who feel lost, who are suffering or alone at this time. Amen. Now, in our services, we usually do share a story, and often it's a wisdom story from one of the faith traditions. Today, though, I'm inviting Bob Greig, who some of you will have met on Zoom many times, and a few of you met at the cafe here in church on Wednesday. Bob's joined us today from Totnes for the first time, in person at a service, and he's going to tell us a story that he told me at the cafe, and I thought it would be lovely to hear that this morning. So Bob, I invite you to come up. Thank you. Thank you for making the journey to be with us here today. And yeah, do remove your mask.
Morning, everybody, and thank you to Kate and my fellow Zoomers. Hello. I felt challenged by Kate's talk last week, and I told her a story about community, which she thought I might repeat to you today, and I said I would. Just by way of brief introduction, I do a very small part-time role with the NHS, which involves working with profoundly disabled young adults. I pick them up in their wheelchairs and take them to a community care facility in Paynton. On a morning before Christmas, this Christmas, I picked up the minibus and drove off to pick up my helper, I have someone who helps me on the bus. I was on the main road. It was dark. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I found myself behind a cyclist. He was in full club gear, but he was clearly an elderly chap. Driving behind him, I noticed the bike slow down, and he collapsed onto the bike and then onto the road. I knew immediately something terrible had happened. So with hazard lights on, I parked up so that no one could drive into him. I jumped out of the van. My phone went flying. The car in front of me I could see had stopped, and a lady was getting out. And I flagged down the car behind me and immediately asked her to phone 999, which she did. So within a few seconds of all this happening, there were two ladies, the driver in front and the driver behind, and myself at this chap's side, and we had the emergency response lady on the phone starting to give us instructions. The man wasn't talking or breathing, and we started CPR. His head was on the road. His body was half on the road, half on the pavement. I took my sweatshirt off and placed it under his head. The lady in the car who was behind me ran back to her car and pulled out a puffer jacket from the boot and wrapped that round his legs and waist. It was freezing cold. I was trying to check his pulse and to see whether he was breathing. The rhythm of 1, 2, 3, 4 from the telephone instructions was ongoing. Time started to pass. On a roadside, it's hard to feel a pulse or breathing. We swapped roles. There was no conversation, really. There was a little, "Come on, fella, breathe for us." And then quietly to each other, "Come on, where's the ambulance?" There was eye communication between all three of us, and we continued this task of being with this man 20 or 30 minutes. Later, we heard the siren, and the blue lights seemed to be bouncing off the heavens on that dawn morning, and our task was almost complete. The chap died later that day. But there are many positives to take away from this story. He didn't die alone. He died on his bike, which it came out was clearly something that he loved doing. It was good that people were there to care for him in his last moments. But the story I told to Kate was the story that I don't tell to others. I'm going to share with you. 5 minutes after the ambulance arrived, I was back in the minibus. I had people to pick up, jobs to do. I had to park up again, and I burst into tears. I'm not one for bursting into tears, but I did. I appreciated that shock had got to me. But there was another thing which I recognised then, and I recognise now, and I recognised after last Sunday's service. I experienced what I can only describe as an overwhelming emptiness, that cocoon of love and care which I was in for 20 or 30 minutes, that small community of love had gone. The intensity of purpose and focus of that community was gone. I said I felt challenged by Kate's talk last week. personally speaking, my own spiritual journey has been something of an individual endeavour. And I think at the age of 57, I'm beginning to realise that individuals can't heal themselves. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Bob, for telling that story, which I found moving the first time I heard it and again just now. The power of community. So Bob mentioned last week's service in which I was talking about living with intention together as a beloved community and in a way that's shared, aligned with our shared values, with a sense of collective shared purpose. And one of those ways can be to form covenant with each other, to come into covenant. And that's an idea that goes right back to the Jewish and the Christian traditions, making an agreement between God and God's people about how to be together. And Myron's going to read a piece for us now about what it means to be a people of covenant. That was my keys. So.
That was Kate's keys. Yeah, I found this piece quite moving when I first came across it. So if I manage to make it through, it'll be a miracle. It's a piece by Universalist Unitarian Reverend Gretchen Haley, and it's entitled, "What Does It Mean to Be Community of Covenant?" So covenant is one of those words that can initially sound kind of stuffy, academic, and out of date. But when you unpack its meaning and its practices, covenant holds a whole vision for how to live in this complicated, beautiful, and broken world. It's a vision that says we are most human when we bind ourselves in relationship, but not just any relationship. Relationships of trust, mutual accountability, and continual return. This is not what our culture teaches us. Our culture teaches us that what it means to be human is to be an individual, self-defined, self-determined, separate even. But our UU covenantal theology affirms that being human comes down to the commitments we make to and with each other, the relationships we keep. We become human through our promises to and with others. And even more than that, covenantal theology doesn't just say that we become human through our promising, but also when we break those promises, and yet find some way to reconnect and begin again. When we repair the relationship because we know we need each other, even when we think the other isn't doing enough. Even when the other is annoying us, or isn't listening well, or isn't doing the things the way we want them done, even then. When we realize right then that we are still connected and we can't give up. And so we return and begin again. This beginning again, says our faith, is when the holy and the human meet. Let me tell you right now, sometime in the next year, maybe in the next few minutes, the people you most believe in and care about are going to disappoint you. Your church is going to disappoint you. This world is surely going to disappoint you like all the time. We're all walking wounded and weary from the way this world can and does break our hearts. And what our faith asks of us, what our faith imagines for us, is that somehow, right at that moment when our hearts break, we will find a way to see through that heartbreak. We will stay put, not close off, not run away, not hurt back. But keep on being in relationship, doing what we can to prepare the world and each other. Keep on opening our hearts with greater love. And right then, our covenantal faith says, we will feel not only most human, but also most whole and most at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Myron, for sharing that reading, and you did get through it. So if you're familiar with the word covenant, you may be familiar with it from these words from Genesis chapter 9. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you. A covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth." They're rather beautiful, those words, I think. So a covenant is a promise, a commitment to a way of living and being with each other, with the world, with our God. It doesn't require us to believe the same things, but it does ask us to agree on some kind of framework for our being and our relating. An arc of intention under which we might feel held and sheltered, loved and encouraged, under which we feel we belong. Very soon after I arrived in Plymouth from Brighton, which is over 7 years ago now, I asked the congregation here, some of you were here then, don't know if you remember, but I asked what you thought was the purpose of this church. I wanted to know what motivated you and why you thought we were here. I imagine that people in Brighton might be going through some similar reflections about who and why you are as you embark on seeking a new minister and what you're looking for. Well, I kept the answers that I got back then, and I had a look back through them this week. And I thought I'd just share 3 of the shorter ones. Some of them are long lists of bullet points, and some of them were just a few words. But these are 3 shortish ones, and they're anonymous because that's how we did it, so I don't know who wrote them. One said, the purpose for us is to be a place that accepts all people, challenges received wisdom, and provides solace and hope in the face of the world outside. Another said, to be a welcoming community, providing loving encouragement and support to all seeking a place to explore their religious thinking and worship according to their consciences, free from creeds and dogmas, and to continue this in perpetuity. So we'd better find a treasurer pretty quickly. And the third, to build inclusive spiritual religious community that fosters deep personal relationship with the divine, loving community with each other, and compassionate interdependence with the wider world, locally and globally. They're nice, I think. And the word community or fellowship came up a lot in all the answers. A sense of being welcoming, a sense of embracing everyone who walked through the doors, which at that time, of course, was the only way you could get in here, not now. But the third example was the only one that used the word build. To build inclusive spiritual community. And that feels significant because I think community is more than simply people being in the same place at the same time, isn't it? That sense of community that may arise spontaneously in specific circumstances, as in Bob's story, where there is a particular shared and focused intention. For a limited period of time, we recognize that as a community that may just happen, does just happen at times. And it's wonderful when it does. But to be an ongoing community, in purity, no less, meeting each week, any group like that really needs to know what it's there for, I feel, what the point of it is, and to work towards that, to actively work towards it. And in order to become a beloved community, really needs to understand what its sole purpose is and commit to that. As I said last week, the world desperately needs communities based on love and integrity. We don't see much of that integrity around us very often. And the early Christians, the desert fathers and mothers, were committed to a way of life, one of quiet contemplation, of prayer, of simplicity, charity and forgiveness. They were focused on putting the teachings of their faith, of Jesus, into practice more than they were focused on arguments about theology. They committed to a way of life. A spiritual community doesn't need a creed or a dogma, but I think it does need something to hold a diverse, disparate, distanced community of free-thinking people who are often fugitives from other churches and other faiths, to hold them together under its umbrella. And though I think this congregation has always had the intention to be welcoming and supportive and warm and to enjoy freedom of conscience, I'm not sure whether it's quite enough. It hasn't been enough for our wider movement, which has steadily lost numbers. And currently, it's clearly not quite enough here either. Some kind of agreement, some kind of shared promise or covenant, perhaps could provide a framework for us, a shared understanding of what we're about. I think it could really help. I was given a book for Christmas. I'm sure many of you were. I was given Carlo Rovelli's latest book called Helgoland. You probably know, or you may know, that he's a quantum physicist, but one who has a remarkable knack for explaining the inexplicable. I think I just about managed to follow it, sometimes only clinging on by my fingernails. But towards the end of the book, he writes, "And so finally I can get to the point," he says. "Quantum physics is the discovery that the physical world is a web of correlations, relative information. The things of nature are not collections of isolated elements in haughty individualism. There is a continuity between the worlds of meanings in our mental life and the physical world. Both are relations. It comes down to relation. And we too are not collections of isolated individuals. We too don't exist except in relation to everyone and everything else, which is another way of saying, as we often do, that we are interdependent, fully interdependent, inextricably part of the interconnected web of existence. And it is only through our relationships with each other and with everything around us that we find ourselves and what we may call God. Like Bob, I'm guessing many of us have experienced a sudden and unexpected feeling of community at times, maybe in similar or in very different circumstances. A sudden sense of purpose, a feeling of working as a team, of belonging, with an implicit understanding of what needs to be done and doing it. Perhaps we can remember or imagine what that feels like. It's wonderful and transporting. And also the sense of loss when it's over can be deep grief. I think another Bob Geldof, expressed something of that feeling where after he managed to pull off Live Aid all those years ago and found himself thinking, was that it? That moment, that coming together, that extraordinary feat at the time, was that it? And then Myron's reading considered what would it mean to be a people who were in covenant, with a shared vision, an ongoing shared vision for how to live in this complicated, beautiful, and broken world. A vision that believes we are most human when we bind ourselves in relationship, not just in any relationship, of course, but in relationships of trust, of honesty, and mutual accountability, relationships based on love. What might a covenant look like? Well, the simplest and most frequently used one by Unitarian Universalists is this. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. But as the Reverend Victoria Safford says, whatever the wording, what matters most is that it's a living, breathing aspiration, made new every day and regularly reviewed. Not something to be enforced, but rather to be reinforced by a culture of forgiveness, of grace, of compassion, whenever we stumble or forget, as we inevitably do. I would like us to try to create a covenant for ourselves. I think the process could be as important as the covenant itself. It could lead us into rich conversation and a sharing of ideas, honestly and openly, about why we're here and how we want to be together. And it's a process I hope we can just dip our toes into in a couple of weeks' time, just to test the water. It's a process that surely would, in itself, whatever the outcome, be a community-building exercise worth embarking on. May it be so. So we're going to sing again now. And just as all the purposes that those of you who were there then offered back in 2014 included the words of love and compassion, support and encouragement, and as the readings, stories we've heard, and the song we listened to, I think all echo that. And so let's sing hymn number 204 in the Purple Hymn Book, which is When I Am Frightened, Will You Reassure Me? Number 204, When I'm Frightened.
Sing to me quietly, will you
We are coming towards the close now of our service. But before I share closing words with you, just to say that the notices will be given by Sheila after our closing music and video. And at the same time, the breakout rooms will be opened up for those of you who would like to join them, although you're also welcome to stay and listen to notices and join them when you're ready, if you prefer. The closing words today are very short. May the quality of our lives be our benediction. May they be a blessing to all whom we touch. May the quality of our lives be our benediction and a blessing to all whom we touch. Amen.